So this afternoon, or this evening, we are going to have two candidates for this position. Yeah, there are five, so we do encourage you to do your research and find out about the others if you're interested. We have two ladies, which is a wonderful thing. I'm excited. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Miss Monique Penning, and she's going to tell you a little bit about herself.
Good evening, and thank you all for the invite. My name is Monica Penning, and I'm running for House District 66. I'm from Louisiana. I was born in Alexandria, and I've been in Baton Rouge for quite some time. I'm excited about the opportunity to represent District 66. I have over 25 years of experience working for the legislature as well as the executive branch of government. I have a master's in public administration, and I worked in the budget office, and I've had experience on the state level in various capacities, and hitting the ground running with all the things that our state faces would bring, me being in that position would bring added value, and I would be able to hit the ground running. And so I really appreciate the invite and the opportunity to be able to represent our district, and thank you again.
So we will add Ms. Chenevert to the discussion when she arrives. In the meantime, we'll get started with our questions. What is the role of a district representative?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I would represent District 66 with respect to legislative matters in the House of Representatives. And the district actually, District 66 actually runs from River Road all the way through I-12 O'Neill. It's a pretty large district. And so I would be the representative in the House for this district.
How will you ensure that the voice of your constituents remains relevant if elected?
Love that question. I definitely believe in feedback, looking at actually doing surveys and hearing from the constituents, knowing on various topics, whatever those topics are, getting feedback certainly is one of the most important things that I definitely would do.
Now let's talk about education. We have a couple of topics we're going to try to cover this evening. There are a growing number of states and advocates for state-funded education savings accounts. These accounts would give students education opportunities outside of public school. Governor Edwards has vetoed these bills in the past, citing that it would cripple our already underfunded public school system even further. Would you support a bill for school choice? Why or why not?
I would. I believe the money should follow the child. I believe every parent should choose the school that best fits or the learning environment that best fits the child. We have a crisis in education, and I certainly believe that the money should follow the child, whether that child is homeschool, parochial school, private school, public school. My mom, by the way, is a retired school teacher, and so it's been an interesting discussion. Some topics that are very sensitive, but I definitely believe that parents should be able to choose whether it's a public school or a private school, that those funds should follow the child.
How do you suggest we manage or mitigate the impact of the loss of funding and resources in the public school system?
That's another excellent question. Funding for schools is on the local level as well as the state level. So there needs to be buy-in on the local level and on the state level. There's funding available on the local level as well as the state level, and I believe that the stakeholders should come together and look at resource allocation and be able to make decisions that would help deal with the deficiencies that we have at hand right now.
In Louisiana, 1 in 5 children face hunger. When children are hungry, they cannot focus in school, they have a greater health care issues, and they also have a greater likelihood of behavioral and social issues. Research shows that food assistance programs like the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, and the Women, Infants, Children Program, or WIC, reduce poverty and food insecurity, leading to improved health and economic outcomes, particularly for children. What meaningful policy solutions will you propose to make it easier for families to access nutritious food?
That's an interesting question. I believe the resources that are available, we need to begin to look at those resources, whether it's on the private side or on the public side. But even as communities come together when their needs, when I walked through the community, there was areas and pockets, believe it or not, in District 66 that were very surprising. Some of the things that I saw, and I believe it's a community effort, not just a state effort, but there's a community effort. I remember growing up, it's some of the things that some of the people in the community did when, if you wanted something, the community was available to us. So I believe not only on the state level, but on a community level, we need to be able to provide and have assistance for the youth.
Well, let's talk about law enforcement. A growing number of people have called for financial resources to be shifted away from law enforcement and reallocated to education, healthcare, etc. Would you support a bill reallocating funds away from law enforcement to other areas of community interest?
No,
And why not?
we need law enforcement because there's some bad apples that mean that they all are bad. That's not something I would support at all.
Okay, so how do you propose we hold law enforcement accountable in a swift and transparent way?
I believe that, I don't want to quote one particular comedian, but I think this is happening now. I think with body cams, we're beginning to see evidence of things that used to occur can no longer occur. When you have training that's available and you're enforcing training and accountability, I believe these things are beginning to manifest.
Let's talk about another issue, gun violence prevention. Gun violence was on the decline nationally and locally before COVID-19. Now, we have seen years of significant uptick in violent crime in Baton Rouge. What factors do you think uniquely shape the state of gun violence in our city, in our community?
Repeat what do I think?
What factors do you think uniquely shape the state of gun violence in our city, in our country?
I really don't. I don't understand the question. What values do I think uniquely shape?
What factors?
Factors. I'd have to really think about that because I believe in the Second Amendment right to bear arms. I don't believe that there should be restrictions. It could be a holistic approach dealing with parents, making sure that the guns are in safe places. But I don't really know how to answer that, to be perfectly honest.
So why are we having such an uptick in gun violence in our area?
It could be a number of reasons. I mean, the climate of social issues and the way people respond to resolving issues that they may not necessarily agree with, I think is driving a lot of that. Opening up, other conversations or being able to handle conflict resolution.
The legislature has had at least one representative propose permitless carry of a firearm without a background check or permit for almost 6 years now. Louisiana is the only state in the Deep South to resist this bill and has either voted against or vetoed this bill each time it comes up. Over 80% of Louisianians also oppose this bill. Would you support permitless carry? And why not?
I'd have to think about it. I haven't made a decision on that.
Let's talk about climate crisis. Louisiana is sinking. Shrinking, sinking. Louisiana, like the rest of the world, just experienced the hottest July and August on record. Sea levels are actively rising, and it is becoming harder to live in climate vulnerable communities like in southeast Louisiana. Keeping in mind the governor's creation of the Climate Initiatives Task Force and federal environmental packages that have funding for solar energy, energy efficiency, and more, what would be a first step the legislature could take that you would support in addressing climate crisis here in Louisiana?
I think no growth, maybe a moratorium on where we are right now. I think that that would be a good approach.
Anything else? That's great for, I guess, the inner communities. What about coastal areas? And
Well, I mean, we have some structure in place dealing with coastal and dealing with coastal mitigation.
Okay.
And I support the things that are currently in place right now with respect to coastal and dealing with the loss of the coastline. I mean, we have some agencies in place, and they are gaining ground with respect to dealing with the coastline and restoring the coastline.
So what should we also do for the flooding problems we have? I know you said the moratorium would stop some new development, but what about for the infrastructure we currently have?
Well, we have stormwater issues that we are looking at, and we're dealing with some stormwater issues right now, dealing with litter abatement, cleaning out those drains, and so there's a lot of work that's already taking place right now, and I believe if we continue down the path of dealing with some of the things that we have in place and some of the dredging, I think that will certainly help with some of the things that we're dealing with.
Now, I'd like to talk about LGBTQ rights. In 2023, we saw an influx of bills targeting LGBTQIA plus families and individuals, specifically those in the trans community. Though vetoed by the governor, HB 648 passed, and in 2024 will limit gender-affirming care for transgender youth and not allow exceptions for parents who had consented for their children to access this care. Do you believe that this was an overreach by the legislature and a blow to parental rights?
Great question. One of the things that I learned in dealing with criminal justice is that the child is not fully developed until age 26 as far as making decisions. And I believe that that same principle when you deal with issues dealing with criminal activity, that the brain is not fully developed at age 26. So that's what I support, because in dealing with law enforcement issues, dealing with juveniles, they said that, look, you have to give them a chance, you have to give them an opportunity. And I think if that principle applies for youth, for age 26, if their brains are not fully developed, I think that same principle should be applicable to this matter as well.
On reproductive rights, the topic of abortion is one of the most divisive issues facing current day politics. What is your position on abortion? Is it to be regulated by lawmakers, or should birthing people have the right to decide on their bodies?
I believe that in the medically necessary to save the life of the mother, obviously it's the woman's choice at that point, but I'm pro-life, and I believe that if the mother's health is at stake, I believe that that's her choice at that point with her and her doctor and her partner, that at that point that's the decision that she needs to make. But I only believe in abortion to the degree that it's medically necessary for the woman.
Well, thank you, Ms. Monique. Do we have any questions from my audience? How about, would you like to ask any questions of the audience, or would you like to give them a better idea of what maybe your um, key issues are
Yeah, I,
would be? In
I
the,
want to. I want the people of the district of 60, people in District 66 know that I want to represent all the people. I'm here tonight because I want to represent all the people, and I love the opportunity to have the dialogue for you all to know where I am. I'm open. I'm open to listening and learning. I heard a saying a long time ago that learning is lifelong. I sit at the table, even in my own family, we have different views and there are even different lifestyles, and we have open discussions in my family. And so I'm here tonight where we may not all disagree. I mean, we may not all agree on things, but you all hear me, and I'm here tonight to represent all the people. And I definitely thank you all for the opportunity to be able to come tonight and answer the questions. And if there are other questions, you all have my contact information. My phone number is 225-441-9567. You feel free to reach out to me or email me. I'm here because I want to represent all the people of our district.
Thank you so much. Elijah, is there anything you'd like to add?
We are way ahead of time, but if there are no questions I think I have a question. In regards to crime and criminal justice, I think what I've witnessed in the legislature is there's often two different perspectives on how to address crime. On one end, when crime is increasing, some view, to have a tough on crime kind of approach to it, harsher sentencing. And then the other side to it is like, well, if those who are committing the crimes are also, under different socioeconomic conditions, poverty, lack of adequate resources, education, tougher sentences doesn't necessarily address it head on. So like, where do you stand on how to navigate that? And also like during the policy making process, like what would a policy look like to address a rise in crime, being that those are the two differing perspectives on how to address it?
I absolutely love your question. One of the, I don't want to get into the scriptures, but it talks about looking at the outer, but you need to focus on the inside. And one of the things that I watch, or I did as a staffer, and I actually looked at the numbers recently, I don't know if you know that about 14,000 people were released in fiscal year 23, just released, right? I'm going to play with some numbers real quick, but 20% of the people had contact with education inside, right? And so those that are eligible, right? So if you have, for the sake of playing with numbers, 10,000 of those people who were released were eligible for some type of educational training, right? Only 20%, that means only 2,000 of 10,000 people had some type of training before they were released. So what type of skill did they have, right? And so part of what I would love to see is that 20% up to 80%, up to 90%, up to 100%, because you have people who don't have skills that are leaving. So if you have, and I think the numbers are about 4,000 or 5,000 going right back. Well, if the recidivism rate is around 43%, well, they have no training. And so I'm a major proponent of education, because if you can train them before they're released, they can have gainful employment. But that recidivism rate, I think, is directly tied to what's going on the inside. There are other numbers that I'm looking at that I would love to see down, and I have some of the statistics with me. I can share with them later. I didn't bring them up here with me. But you have assault rates, inmate on staff assaults, they're up inside, right? You have sexual assaults on the inside, they're up. Problems. So I'm talking about looking at what's going on in the inside, because if you can deal with what's going on the inside, I think it'll help what's going on the outside. Because if you do the math, if on average, 10,000 people are leaving every year for the past 10 years. How many people do you have out there, right, with no skills that may be going back in, and the recidivism rate, and I think it's directly tied to education. I definitely do. So when you talk about what to do, one of the things that I would love to see is increased education inside those facilities. You know, I want to see the sexual assaults, they're up as well. When I compare last year to this year, they're up. Well, but you have another issue. I mean, when I talk about, on my website, I talk about multi-level, multi-dimensional. You may have issues and disagreements on what the current law is and who should be arrested, who shouldn't be arrested, all that. We can have those discussions, but I think we need to look at what's going on the inside. And if you can get the sexual assaults down, if you can get the offender and offender assaults down, if you can get the offenders attacking the staff down, you're going somewhere. And then you have the other issue on high turnover rate. Well, you have inexperienced guards. Anytime your turnover rate is over 100%, 150%, well, you have inexperienced people out there with people who are well seasoned. And so that's another issue that I think we need to deal with that will mitigate what we're dealing with on the outside. I believe what we see that's going on the outside is a direct result of what's happening on the inside that we need to deal with. And I will say that the Department of Corrections, they began to deal with issues on dealing with staffing and salaries, because you cannot expect certain things at a certain level.
Yes.
You know, so salaries, and I think they've tried, I looked at some of the numbers, I think only 3 of the 8 facilities that I looked at, the turnover rate was lower when you compare one year to the other, but it's still a problem. So for me, I think it's dealing with what's going on the inside.
What do you feel are some of the biggest barriers to education on the inside?
Great question. I think it's a resource allocation issue. May not necessarily mean they need more money. It may be moving money around within.
Okay.
But I believe resource allocation.
Okay. And then how do you feel about poverty, not just in District 66, but in Louisiana as a whole? I think poverty is, prevalent in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. How do you just attack that? I know that's kind of a broad question, but what is your philosophy around?
I think it's
that?
Education. I think it's education. I think if we can start with education, I can also talk about it from an economic development standpoint. If we look at even our tax structure and be able to get different industries in, match what the universities or the 2-year schools are doing with the needs in the community or the needs in industry, I think that's certainly a place that we would need to look at.
How do you feel about a topic that I hear a lot is a lot of youth and young professionals are leaving Louisiana. What do you feel will make young professionals want to stay? I mean, you say education, economic development. I think that plays a role, but well, I guess 2 parts. What are some factors that are making them leave, and what do you feel will make them stay?
I think perceived biases that are here. I believe that economic development is a major driver. I'm familiar with a situation, personal and close up, where a person that I know was recruited away. You can't match a $20,000 or $30,000 pay increase to doing the same job. And so when you think about this state and our tax structure, so you're going to a state where they don't have income tax. I don't know if we can necessarily eliminate it, because we have to have something to balance it. To say you're going to eliminate it, maybe we can lower it, but $4.5 billion is a lot of money to say you're just going to do away with. So we have to have something, even talking about expanding the base, and the base not being so narrow when we talk about taxes, when we talk about sales tax, as an example, if we're going to do something with respect to income tax.
I really would like to go back to the gun violence issue. You said you haven't decided whether you're in favor of or you oppose a permitless carry. And if you are in a place of worship and someone comes in to that place of worship without, I guess, any concept of what it takes, of what this person should be experiencing at this point in time, are you willing to allow for the right of a Second Amendment to have someone obtain a gun without the appropriate background checks so that we know that they are not suffering from some mental illness, or they actually have done some criminal activity in their past, and we're just not checking to be sure that they should not have a gun?
I understand your question, and let me say it this way. You're talking about a place of worship, and
I mention that because that's where a lot of us are.
yes, ma'am.
And so it's really frightening to me as a parent and grandparent that in a place where I consider home and safe, that someone who hasn't had a background check, who has not had the experience of actually going through a concealed gun carry class so that they even know what it is they're doing or what impact their action would have at any given moment, because we just don't know.
So, and I understand and I appreciate, and these are complex issues. Let me say this. I still need to think about it, but what I will say is I would like for you to have an opportunity, if you wanted to bring something to protect yourself to your place of worship. I believe that I need to be able to be open enough for you and other parishioners to be able to take what you want into your place of worship. That's what I'm saying, that you need to be able to have the option to protect yourself. And so I'll say this. You know, the Word of God talks about how he came for war and not for peace, right? And I'm trying not to go all into this, but then you talk about the whole armor of God, right? And so if you're talking about armor, so you're talking about being positioned and ready for war. And I'm not talking about having war. I'm talking about having the right to bear arms. I'm saying you, as a person, you should be able to have the right to protect yourself. And that's the issue. Now, those that are not doing right, then that's another issue. But I believe that I would be remiss if I didn't say that you have an opportunity to bring what you need to protect yourself, no matter where you are. That's what I'm saying. Because look at the other side of it. I mean, some have legally gotten it, some have not. But it didn't stop them. And so, to me, I'm leaving you open and leaving you vulnerable. It's a paradigm shift in thinking. But think about it. I don't want you to be a victim because you didn't have the access to what you needed to protect yourself. I mean, it's a different way of thinking about it. It's a click in the thinking, because the person who's the victim not have the opportunity, you should be able to have that opportunity.
If I want the opportunity,
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
then I would take the necessary classes and obtain a weapon legally
Yes, ma'am.
via the background check and the concealed gun carry stipulation that we currently have. What bothers me, and I don't know about others, are those who can just obtain a weapon without having the chance to learn more about what their actions can possibly do in the community. Now, some don't care, but there are some maybe who you can, stop because they shouldn't have a weapon. And so that's why I'm really interested in what you have to say on this issue, and especially since over 80% of Louisianians want a permit, program for gun ownership.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else, Elijah?
I'm good. No questions from the crowd? All right. Yes, sir. Well, we'd like to thank you for your time, for coming to show up, coming to share, you know what I'm saying, your views. And would like to give you an opportunity to give closing remarks. Yeah.
Thank you all again. I'm Monique Penning. I'm running for House District 66. I'd love to represent all the people. We have a lot of difficult decisions before us. I believe I can hit the ground running, and I'm open. My door is open to having more discussions, and I appreciate the time tonight. Thank you.